You and I with Rashmi Shetty is a human library audio podcast bringing in stories of people you and I can draw inspiration from. Welcome to the third season of this amazing story listening journey. Ordinary folks, extraordinary lives, their uniqueness and individuality, making them interesting to talk to and to listen to, each one of them completely connected to the voice in me and with motivational stories of moving beyond themselves to make a difference in the world. A reaffirmation of the fact: open your eyes wider. The world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Our guest today is T.C Sajit, a strategic thought leader with transformation experience of over 3 decades in oil, steel, telecom, financial services, and aviation sectors, with an emphasis now on digital transformation through innovative practices. A seasoned practitioner of diversity, equity, and inclusion, he continues to pioneer handling human capital confidently post the pandemic. Acknowledged by the business fraternity and regularly sought after for insights via various forums and webinars, Sajid shows and proves that consistency and proficiency in managing all stakeholder interests and striking the balance is where the optimum utilization of human capital is done. And this, he says, is possible by institutionalizing empathy-laced business partnering. An ICF certified coach and a CII XIM Business Excellence Model Assessor, he's also the former board member for Business Intelligence with the Chief Learning Officer magazine. Making a difference for over 30 years with a unique blend of leadership in HR and business strategy, Sajit is an erstwhile Tata Ethics Counselor and a former director on the board of Kempegowda International Airport Foundation, the KIAF, and a former director on the board of Aerospace and Aviation Sector Skill Council, NSDC. Listen in as Sajit shares his journey and the beautiful nuggets he gives on what it is that the HR professionals need to remember. Hi, Sajit. Such a pleasure having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. I know you as somebody from the HR space, a man of few words people love to listen to because of the storyteller you are. But I'm curious to know what little Sajit was like: quiet, nerdy, or a naughty boy? What was your journey like from little Sajit to the Sajit that we all know you today as?
Thank you, Rashmi, for having me on this show. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Your question sends me back by about 57 years. As the only child of my parents, I was born in Bombay, and I don't think I was a nerd, or neither was I very naughty. I'd like to think so. Maybe my parents can vouch for it or not vouch for it, as the case may be. But yes, so I grew up in a joint family with the other cousins and a lot of other people. So there was a lot of people. So that, I presume, actually sowed the seeds of being today what I am as an HR person. The ability to deal with people and all of that. So going back to my childhood, it was a very, very happy one. Only child of my parents. My father was in the central government services, so it was a very stable life in that sense. And got a chance to go to a few places. Was born in Bombay, grew up a bit there. Too many years in Gujarat, where I'm still a domicile of, and then moved to Bombay, which my career brought me to, and have been in Bangalore from 2005. So, so I'm now, in that sense, a domicile of Bangalore.
Okay, so your exposure is pan-Indian, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah.
And how was the shift into different schools at different points of your life? Looking
Okay.
back now, did that shape you in a way to who you are?
In a big way. The initial days up to I think to the seventh standard, I was in Bombay, so that did give you the confidence of being a big city boy. You mixed with everybody. The school kind of exposed you to the fact that you have to take on what comes. There's nothing like everybody knowing everybody else. Thereafter, I moved to a much smaller town called Jamnagar because my father was posted there. that did give me a kind of a Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam feel, because it's a much smaller town and almost everybody knew everybody else. So the value building years were probably in this place called Jamnagar, which has now become famous thanks to the Ambanis and their pre-wedding celebration that happened recently. Otherwise, it was a one-cart town, which subsequently became the petroleum capital of India and probably of the world because of the two refineries that are there. Great memories in that place. It also did teach me a lot of values of conducting business because Gujarat is predominantly a business state, you know, and there is a different approach to life and the way you deal with situations and people. It's a very welcoming and I trust you at the first instance, is the approach that society offers more than anywhere, and it's quite evident because of the fact that they are businessmen and they have the ability to therefore kind of see the situation and read a person, and that was something that kind of imbibed in me, a typical middle class employed Malayali who came from Bombay. So I'd like to believe that got the best of both worlds, and that has contributed in a big way to form the values and the characters that I have imbibed over the years. So that has been the foundation for me.
Okay. And as you were growing up, since Gujarat seems to be such a prominent aspect of your life and the influence in your life, what are some of the things that you are very clear about that you're going to turn into or become or choose as a profession?
Okay. First and foremost, there was always this essence or this underlying sense of looking for the opportunity. So that's something. So everything needs to be looked at as a possible opportunity, and that's something that the small town taught you, because obviously, even as a possible contender for either an admission in a bigger city or a job, you had to ensure that you had to steel yourself up to make sure that you were at par, if not better than them. And each of those therefore was kind of a beautiful opportunity to try and meet expectations, if not excel. Being cordial, being nice, the softer aspect, despite being a business town, the softer aspect of what was most prominently imbibed, because being nice to the other person, not having an issue, in your interpersonal things, giving the benefit of the doubt to the other person, and getting along with people. I'd like to believe that was something that the business community teaches you, G or Gine do, for want of a better word.
Yeah, I love how you said that. But one question a lot of kids have, especially when parents have a job that requires constant change, is they understand they're adaptable, they just fit in anywhere. But one thing they don't have is best friends. Was that an
True.
issue with you too?
No, luckily for me, I had primarily two big stints, and I kind of, like I said, live and let live, Gio Ginedo. So that I presume helped me to have a few friends, and I still have a few friends who I had kind of got when I was still in school in Gujarat and in Bombay, and they still continue to be my friends. But yes, you have a point. I'd like to believe that it also depends on the kind of person you are, but transferable jobs kind of force you for more than anything else for survival to be able to adapt and adjust. And you see your parents do the same. You have a new set of neighbors, you have a new place to live in, you have a new town to go, you have a new direction to take to go to school. So the adaptability becomes kind of a need or a requirement which gets accepted as part of the government employee's life.
Yeah, I like that. And when you say adaptability, how did it help you as a student as you were moving from, say, a smaller town back into the city to continue education? What was the goal you had and what were the ambitions you carried? Because now you are in the Geo or Ginedo world, but then you
Correct.
need to also find what you want to become. So, what were your aspirations? Who were your role models?
All right. I originally actually, when I was growing up, there weren't very many opportunities, unlike today. Again, your greatest inspiration and source of hope for a job was the employment newspaper. It came every Thursday, and those carried both the results of competitive exams and also applications formed for the next set of exams. All these jobs, I mean, your opportunity was against the best in the country. The venues were different, the locations were different, but you still selected against the best. So it did give you ample opportunity. Of course, my advantage of having the rest of the family still back in Bombay gave me a slightly better edge over the rest who were only bound or who had only been to smaller towns or lived there. So that for me was an opportunity now to touch upon the inspiration. If you ask me honestly, I'd wanted to become a cricketer, which never transpired. So I would probably say Sunil Gavaskar, you know, or maybe a Kapil Dev, but I wasn't as sturdy or tall as him. So maybe a Sunil Gavaskar was an inspiration while I was growing up in school. But then somewhere along the way, I had to begin wearing glasses. So which meant that I was scared that the ball would hit my eye. So therefore I moved into maybe a badminton. But yes, once I reached college, I aspired for first a central government job because my father was in the central government. And the middle class Indians still looked at private sector jobs with a lot of skepticism, which was never the case when it came to a government or a quasi-government job. As long as you did your work, and those were the times when there were still computers were still something that you read about, not something that you saw. So that was the kind of middle class expectation and aspirations that I grew up with. As luck would have it, a lot of private sector opportunities opened up suddenly with the onset of computerization and IT industry opening up. And then a lot of venues opened. However, I was lucky to have got a central government job as a first employment.
Okay. So what did you study and how was college life for you? Did that competitive spirit with this beautiful balance of Geo or Ginedo help you
Yeah.
look at life and your classmates and fellow students in a very different manner compared to the rest around you?
Thank you. But I got to make a little confession here. I was kind of unofficially permitted to bunk as often as possible because I was playing both cricket and badminton, both for the college and for the school, for the higher secondary, of course, which meant that even the fathers who were our teachers were kind of a little lenient to me. And I'd like to believe, therefore, to answer your first question a little better, because I was going for my practices. But yes, it also kind of gave me a little edge. A lot of people wanted to be friends with me, talk to me about my various trips as part of the sports events that I went out of town. And that again, the fact that you were dealing with other states and other people and, people you've never met before, you've never meet again, helped further kind of polish your interpersonal skills, getting along with others. And I think that was a bigger education for me today when I look at hindsight rather than actually the textbooks that the schools and colleges offer.
Because I feel that is something that's lacking in our education system. Soft skills. I don't know why they call it soft skills. I feel it's a life skill to communicate, to understand that getting to know people around you is very important. And for that, you need to let go of that hesitation. Otherwise, nobody would know your story. So, in the process of putting yourself through all of this, not by choice, but by chance, as you started moving further, central government job was what you were seeking. What was the first job that you got into, and what was that moment of satisfaction when you actually cleared the exam like?
Okay. Yeah. So as usual, like I said, so obviously every few months you had one of these exams coming. So you apply and then you wait for, and let me tell you, it is today's standards, a very strange life. You send an application, with a pay order, as they called it, which is either 5 or 10 rupees. And then it's complete. You had no clue whether it actually went to the right place. And after a few months, when you least expected it, you suddenly got a call saying that you're supposed to appear for a written exam at so and so town, which is probably a few hundred kilometers away in certain cases. And then you all geared up, the whole family kind of, turned uptight and said everybody was almost preparing to go, but only you went. So, but it was a very interesting phase. And your mother, obviously, making sure you carried all the right clothes, your father making sure all the certificates were intact and photocopies, sufficient copies of, the Xerox was carried by you, attested. That was the word. And then, yes, then you went for the exam. So you actually, in many ways, carried the aspiration and hope of your entire family with you. While not that it really mattered, but then like I said, when you grew up a little more, you realize that yes, there was an aspiration, there was a long-term vision and a hope that would attach to you when you went for these exams. So I did go for my first exam, which was a customs and central excise exam. And again, like I said, it's a long drawn process. So you first have your written exams, and then you wait for that to be cleared, and then you're invited for a mains interview, and then finally you wait for your medical checkup, and then maybe after about a year and a half, you suddenly get your list out, and again the list comes out at the various commissioners' offices, and you get to know through somebody. Again, the advantage of being in a small town is there are about 7, 8, 10 people who appeared. So almost everybody kind of knew, and anybody got any news, they were more than happy to come rushing to either tell you that you qualified or you didn't qualify. Both had its own uniquenesses and pleasure. So in my case, luckily, I had qualified, and so I decided to join. So I joined the Indian Customs in the year 1992.
Okay, so that was your first job,
The
Indian
first
Customs.
job, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, you must have been a hero, right?
No, not really, not really, not really.
Okay,
So
because the uniform is so smart.
yeah,
But let's pause here, Sajit, and I want you to just take a comparison of kids today to the kids in the 70s, 80s, where small things gave us a lot of joy, while
correct.
today's kids are very difficult to please. So, how would you compare the two? Because I'm very curious. This is something that always intrigues me
Yeah.
when I speak to people from that era of the 70s, 80s to today's children. And is it that our aspirations were a lot low? Or was it that we were happy with smaller things? Or what is it? What is it that made us happy and find joy in the today's trivial, according to the children of today?
Correct. Rashmi, I'd like to believe that, we were financially not as comfortable as we are today. The
Yeah.
middle class, especially of India,
Yeah.
you know, we actually operated on a shoestring budget.
Yes.
30th of every month was the financial expertise of the mother of the house, no less, till the next salary came in. And that applied to the majority of Indians. So therefore, that planning, I'd like to believe, uh, actually ensured that we had few and far between luxuries by today's standards. And they were almost planned and budgeted, if you remember. If you got a first class in your 10th standard, your father had promised you a bicycle, which was about 400 rupees in those days. And that was a princely sum of money. You know, today, your one cinema ticket in a PVR costs you much more than that. So I'd like to think that financially, the average budget that the Indian household had was much lesser. The venues for spending were also much more limited. Today, I'd like to think that our Indian rupees buying power has also probably gone down a little. While our corpuses and our kitties have increased in the income space, the opportunities and the variety that today the children have. For that, you have to thank the internet and the social media. You can sit here and buy something from the US, and the dollar conversion doesn't kind of frighten them anymore. But in our days, we only spoke of the Indian rupee. I still remember 70 paise was the candy stick that you got from Quality, and 1 rupee 20 paise was a vanilla cup. Today, probably the beggars wouldn't accept a 1 rupee coin from us on the road. So I'd like to think that our expectations automatically therefore got impacted by all these external factors. The limitation of resources that we had, or kind of, we had our budget that we had to work within, and the options available. I don't know if you remember this, but the birthday cake was the single biggest thing that we aspired for, and the largest sweet that we could have once a year. It was almost about a half a kilo, depending on the number of friends that you were planning to invite. There again, there was a rationing that happened because the parents decided who to be called or who not to be called till a certain age. And thereafter, that money was then given to you, and you went out with your friends and probably ate snacks, had a soft drink or a cold drink. A cold drink was a luxury, if you remember, Rashmi. A full-fledged bottle, unless you went out with your parents. Of course, there was a health element that they attributed to. You'll fall sick if you have too many cold drinks was the other reason. But yes, I was just trying to correlate the two. Today, if you see the children of today, therefore, but that's also because we as parents, we as the elders, probably have been a little more free in our willingness to spend. And I'd like to think that we've started now being a little more financially comfortable because the planning element has brought us also a certain level of comfort. There are multiple avenues of being financially secure, which is something our younger generation is probably enjoying thanks to our financial planning.
Yeah.
So I don't think to blame anybody, but I like to pat ourselves on the back to think that we've been smart in that sense to have just about enough to have a few more luxuries now in comparison to them.
And now, an afterthought after you said that, are we in the process making our next generation financially savvy or more comfortable that they don't have to think about how do I secure my future?
Yeah. So while we have been trying our best to get this thing, something very unique I have noticed about this next generation. I have a daughter who's 26, so I like to qualify her in that category. They're not really materialistically inclined, which we were. For example, one of our first aspirations when we grew up was to have a house of our own. And the second one, the icing on the cake, was probably a four-wheeler of our own. A two-wheeler for sure, four-wheeler if possible. You know, and this was kind of sandwiched in the midst of being able to pay enough to our children to have good education. But in today's times, I noticed that ownership of assets is no longer such a glamorous element. They rather spend a lakh of rupees on an iPhone than invest in the initial deposit for a flat or a house. They're not very interested in that. And I'd like to think that the confidence that they have gained, and the pandemic has a big role to play in this. The uncertainty that is thrown to them and they experience as very young people has also kind of given them a sense of bravado, for want of a better word. We'll see when something occurs, because planning is not really going to help. Beyond a point seems to be the new realization. Whereas for us, we planned everything, including the day of retirement when we started working. Even the mother of the house actually planned for the jewelry meant for the children's marriages. 20 years, when before they were 10 years old, she was already planning and compiling them for them. For this is for A, this is for B, and this is for C.
True, true.
Today,
Very true.
I'd like to think that we've moved away from that.
Which is good
And
according to you?
I'd like to think in the present age and times is good, because I don't know. Can I narrate a small anecdote I read the other day?
Please.
There was this. I don't know how far is accurate, but there was this little write up about the present ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. He says, "My grandfather traveled these deserts on a camel. My father had a Mercedes Benz. I have a much better car, so does my son. But the way things are going, I'm almost certain that my grandson would probably be back to riding on camels." you know so while it may be good, it may be bad, or it may be the fact that we are coming a full circle, there is a possibility that probably the next generation may not really have financial security and materialistic comforts as a priority beyond a point.
Yeah, and on the flip side, with natural resources dwindling, maybe we'll have to go back to be more nature friendly in the way we approach our lifestyles.
Rashmi,
But
there's one point I want to add. Sorry, here.
yeah.
Maybe we human beings, we probably aspire for things that we wanted but didn't get. You know what I mean? So maybe today most children are born into a car, are born into a house which is their own.
Yeah.
Whereas we were people who were still seeing our parents trying to aspire to own a bigger house, a bigger car.
Yeah.
We were in that transient century, where we were still, as India and as a country, as an economy, still had aspirations materialistically.
Yes.
Whereas today, this generation has arrived with all of it in front of them at their fingertips, So it doesn't really enamor them anymore. So maybe the priorities have realigned themselves a little more.
Yeah. I love that statement you just made. Priorities are realigned. Coming back to your priorities. So your first job in the customs.
That's
How
right.
was that experience, and what did priorities show you at that point? How aligned were they to what you aspired, and how quickly did aspirations all come true?
Okay, so it was in many ways a dream come true, because I got recruited, and I joined a very, very good officer who just retired a year ago as a Director General of GST and the Chief Commissioner of Bombay, Mr. D.K. Srinivas, who I consider as an elder brother even today. So I joined him, and it was a great ride. I mean, here we were. I was all of 23 when I joined. And the government actually issues a revolver or a gun for you, which has bullets in it, actually. And the nearest that you had seen, those were on the Amitabh Bachchan holding them on the screen. So it was very, 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 very exciting, very, very interesting. And I was luckily in a place called Jamnagar, which was then a hotbed for smuggling activities, especially precious metals. So it was a wonderful experience, a few very exciting adventures also, where we had encounters, and we succeeded in getting again, what that job probably taught me was the innate human qualities. You could be on the right side of law, you could be on the wrong side of law. Fundamentally, we are all human beings, and there are some basic values and ethics that we practice, and some survival instincts that we are all born with. So when the push comes to a shove, we actually, all of us tend to show the identical true colors of us. And the interesting or the exciting life and death situations that a couple of times that arose in that job, in the first job in customs, reminded me or kind of reconfirmed to me the fact that we're all in this together finally. We could be wearing different dresses, we could be speaking different dialects, but the basics fundamentally boil down to just the same. It's survival, it's comfort, it's my own. It's just those three things that actually finally matter.
Okay, wow. So it's survival, and that is basic for everyone, yes. But from there, when you learn these beautiful life lessons right there, it's at a point when you were very early in your career,
Yeah.
did it give you reasons to aspire for something higher? What was that stint like, and where did your next steps lead you to?
Wonderful. So what it also taught me is that since the stakes were so high in this job, like I said, in most cases, if it was actually a serious movement or an activity which meant saving revenue and also kind of preventing some anti social or anti-national activities, they were all very, very closely fought situations because both parties didn't want to give up. They had their reputation, they had their integrity at stake on both sides. What it also really very strongly taught me that whether we like it or not, fundamentally, what is righteous, what is honest, what is truthful wins. It survives. So that survival in this case is actually the win. And that was a big lesson while it had been taught to me by my parents while I was growing up and by my school teachers and all the lessons that we learned. This was a practical reminder to tell you. This is like reading, probably a simplistic example would be reading a chemistry formula in the textbook and then doing it in the chemistry lab and seeing it appear in front of your eyes. It was sort of a realization, and that I'd like to believe has probably made me a more grounded and therefore reinforced the values that I need to live by. And that's what the uniform job of mine really taught me.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'd like to believe that as it's the proof of that pudding is the fact that I'm sitting here now recounting it after 30 years.
30 years. Okay. And anything specific in a story form that you'd like to share at this point, Sajit, or are they not stories that you think you can share?
No, of course I can. There was a very serious. We had specific information, and there was this information basis which we intercepted a boat in mid sea out of the port. It was raining. It was rainy season, June 22nd to be precise. I went with a couple of my junior staff. We intercepted the vessel, and it was blown up by the team because they were worried that we would actually detain them and their guilt would be found. They were carrying precious metal on board. Sadly, we lost one of our junior most employees in the blast, but the rest of us kind of survived. But it was a blast, and a boat was ablaze, and the suspects all jumped into the water and swam onto our boat, which is a distance. Now there was a low tide, so there was no movement possible between the two boats. So while me and my staff were hanging onto the burning inferno of a boat, 2, 3 people came back and actually rescued us. Now, they were the junior most staff members, like I said, and some of them incidentally knew my father, who was also in a similar shipping line, and because they knew I was so-and-so's son, they were even more enthusiastic or eager to come back and make sure that I was unharmed and I could be taken back onto our boat. Again, a reconfirmation of the fact that if you're honest and you've done a job without knowingly harming anybody, the payback comes to you sooner, if not later. So I'd like to think that my father's pension was paid in full on that night.
That's such a beautiful way of looking at it. Such a beautiful way. And then on from there,
Yeah.
why and how did you move? Where did you move? How did your journey progress?
Correct. So having gone through that, then I realized that I was lucky enough, and also you look at it differently. That was the highest possible or the most exciting role that you could get in the department. And with a wonderful boss, it was a great thing to go. However, the larger scheme of things doesn't always work in your favor. And being the only child of my parents, I thought they also thought, and I also thought that maybe this is all right for the first few years when you're a bachelor, when you're all alone, and you've made enough stories to probably narrate or boast to your grandchildren many years from then. So I'd like to use the word that probably a sense of sanity prevailed, of not wanting to take too many risks. And my boss also had moved on then, to another role in another place. So I decided to. Incidentally, while I was waiting for my results of this exam, I had started studying, doing my post graduation. We didn't have an MBA in HR in those days. We had what was known as a PG in PM and IR, Personal Management and Industrial Relations. So I had actually qualified myself in that. So as luck would have it, around the same time, SR set up a refinery, started building a refinery in Jamnagar. And I used the fact that I was a postgraduate in personal management to ask them if they have a role. And they said, of course, we have, and we'll be more than happy to have you. So that is how I made the switch to the corporate world, and I've been in the corporate world since then. This is from the year 1995.
Wow. And what drew you to that line? Is it something that you knew what you're signing up for? You knew what you're going to get out of it? Because this life that you are going to leave behind was an exciting one. And you
Absolutely.
knew the other one is going to have people, of course. But
Right.
what is it that made you take that decision that I'm going to go into that line? I'm sure there were other options available.
They were. But I thought that, having done my personal management, realized the nuance or the intricacies of dealing with human beings was the most complicated element available on earth. All machines are lesser complications in comparison. I thought that was very interesting. And the few experiences that I went through while I was a uniformed officer made me think that having qualified, and let me tell you what I learned in my post graduation actually played itself out in various shades when I was dealing with criminals and the other kind of people that I was dealing with in the department. So that kind of reinforced my interest in this. And somewhere the innate fact that dealing with human beings is something that will never go out of fashion or
Mm.
never go out of vogue. There's always something more to learn or to be able to handle,
Mm.
is what actually moved me to human resources.
Wow. Okay. And that's been a long journey in itself for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You've been to many different places in that space. So,
Yes.
what are some of those moments, milestones, unforgettable moments in this journey that you'd like to recall where this decision of yours just kept coming back to you saying that this was the right choice?
Absolutely. Uh, First and foremost is, like I said, it further helped me to understand the fact of what is it that drives human beings. And while I was in a law enforcement agency before this, I realized that the psyche, the mindset, and the percentage of wrongdoing that happens is almost the same everywhere. It is just that on one side you have a certain element of the machinery which constantly monitors to track them. On the other side, in the corporate world, most of it goes undetected. A few of them do get detected, and it probably becomes a thing. So that was the first part that I realized about this business, and therefore also to also give the small benefit of, and most of the times people who do wrong or people who are trying to improve themselves. See, wrong normally comes from some aspiration or some ambition, and the doer never thinks that it is wrong. It is a stepping stone to go to the next level. It's for my own larger good and for my family, which I also realize is something that the so-called petty criminals who someday grow to become the dons also start the same way, you know. And so that was something very, very interesting, and it helped me to actually to be able to deal with the fresh talent whom we recruited. And as long as you give them the basic guidance to stick to the truth or stick to what is right or for the larger interest of the organization, they came out as great corporate citizens. And that has almost happened in every organization that I've worked. And for me, that's far more satisfying than any other increment or bonus that I got. Let me share something very interesting to you with you. One of my schoolmates yesterday sent me a message saying that I met a boy in Jamnagar who when we met, we remembered you. And he said, I got a job in 1997 because of Sajit sir. So in case you know him, please convey my regards. I will probably be retiring in a year's time. Now, I like to think that he's one of those corporate citizens who have still worked well, who still remember, and have still have some recollection or a feel good factor about what he probably experienced in the company that we recruited. So for me, those little nuggets are what actually really kind of make me feel good. If you were to ask me specifics, the job that I did in HR actually gave me a great opportunity to help people without really having to do anything. I'll give you a classic example. There was this girl who had got who came to give me an invitation card to say, "Sir, I'm getting married, so I want you to invite you for the marriage." And after I congratulated her and asked her what the boy was doing, etc., etc., the next was another envelope which said, "Sir, I'm also resigning because I need to relocate to another town." So I said, "How can we do that? We're going to fight with your in-laws and your husband to be." And so I asked her where her husband works and all of that. And as is normally is known, HR, most people know each other. So I called up the head of HR there, who was a friend of mine, and he said, "You can't take one of my lady employees just because she's getting married to one of your employees." And the best part is, he said, "If you can give me 3 months and if she can manage 3 months at your place, I promise to transfer the boy to Bangalore. So then she doesn't have to resign. Now I'm setting up a new unit. I need good people there." And it actually happened. And I got actually a box of sweets with the couple came to give me personally when they had their first baby. This is, "Sir, thanks to you, we never had to leave Bangalore. I didn't have to leave my job. He also didn't lose his job." So these are things I'd like to think that, are something that really makes the job that you do fulfilling and worthwhile. I don't know if I've answered your question completely.
No, no, you have, because it's your perspective that I'm looking at in this question. It doesn't have any one right answer. But HR, human relations, is something that I can see here in full display. And for every HR professional, Sajit, now that you've been there in this space for so long, what are at least three nuggets that you'd like to tell them, which makes them an impactful HR person?
I'd like to think first and foremost, we must be empathetic. We are dealing with other human beings.
Mm.
I joke to my team whenever I get a chance to tell them. I said, even the law of the country says you're innocent unless proven guilty.
Mm.
Have the same benevolence when you deal with employees and other human beings. They must be right. There's no reason why anybody would want to do anything that is incorrect or not correct. So if you were to start on the basis of an empathy that he or she has a reason for a concern or for an ailment or for a requirement, let's look at it from their perspective. So I'd like to think that being empathetic is the first and foremost uh, quality, if I may say, to be a good employee, leave alone an HR employee. To be a member of the society also, empathy, I think, and that's something that we were forced to adopt, if you know, when the pandemic hit us out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
We were forced to be empathetic with our neighbors. We were forced to be empathetic with our maidservants and vice versa, because they, kind of risked their own health and sometimes came to clean up the house
Yeah.
whenever time and the law permitted. So I'd like to think empathy is something that we Indians, we've always been empathetic, which is probably why we are the oldest surviving society. And we maybe had forgotten about it when the Western influence came to us in the late 70s, 80s, and maybe up to the 2000s. But one thing I'm very glad now that the current generation seems to be far more empathetic and sensitive to others, which
Really?
is,
You think
yes,
so?
yes, they are. They are very socially conscious. And from the social consciousness comes the fact that the responsibility towards the others germinates from there.
Mm.
Not wanting to use plastic is not just for themselves, for example, is to make sure that we leave this world slightly better, if not as
Yeah.
good a place when we leave it tomorrow. So
Yes.
that social responsibility, I'd like to think, is a very, very positive step towards being fair to other human beings and other living creatures.
Mm. Mm.
It sadly was probably missing or not a priority when we were growing up.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
know, so that's something that I think empathy is the first one. Integrity and honesty again is something that I'd like to think. Anything that we say and do, say what you mean and mean what you say is what I meant, and that again is something that the newer generation is seems to be taking a lot of effort to try and adhere to. You know, I'll give you a classic example. The other day, I saw somebody jumping the signal. And I had a very young person with me, and he or she was most flustered. How could he jump? And the social responsibility came to the fore. It said, suppose somebody was still crossing the road, and when he jumped the signal and this thing, then he had hit the person, what would have happened? It was less of the fact that the signal was being jumped than the harm they could cause to somebody else with the rash act. Now that for me is very, very heartening and gladdening to see. Yeah. And finally, I'd like to think that we should not lose our professionalism. We are there to do a job in the office, and there is an expectation and a norm within which, a guideline within which we need to perform that. As long as we keep that at the back of our mind, which we tend to at times get carried away and either overdo or underdo. And the reason I'm saying it, these three rudimentary things, is because most of all other nuances of routine work is now getting automated. So I think that our job is to make sure that the human aspects are still protected and maintained.
Yeah, that's so true. That was my next question. You answered it anyway, about humans being replaced. And there are many things about being human that cannot be replaced. And in the world of technology, my only wish is it doesn't go away from our interactions. So moving back to your journey, Sajit, how has your HR journey been, and where are the different places where you saw all of what you said, rudimentary, but in many cases forgotten as well, where you used all of these, and how was your journey in the HR space? Where all did you spread this light of these rudimentary elements of HR, which are required to make it such a beautiful profession? Though today, many people complain about the department when it comes to many organizations. So where were you, and how was that journey?
So let me start with the first transition that I had, which was moving from a central government job where, like I said, the government had actually allotted a gun to me. We were a law unto ourselves if we thought so. I mean, which is not true. And then having to move into a private sector, and at a relatively junior level. I was fortunate to have a very fine vice president, a Parsi gentleman who had worked with many international companies and MNCs, and he again, through his behavior, I just got married, by the way, when I got into this job, and we were setting up this refinery. So one of the first jobs was recruiting a lot of people. So which means we had a room full of CVs that we were supposed to screen and shortlist and interview people. But he made it a point. He once saw me uh, carrying a few CVs in my hand when I was going home, and I was about a month old, having got married. So he stopped me. He got a little upset with me. He said, "What are these papers?" I said, "They're CVs. I want to screen them at home, sir. I'll have time." He says, "Go put them back in your table and then come and talk to me. I'm waiting for you." So the vice president of the company saying this to me. So I anyway very sheepishly went and put them back. I came back and said, he says, "Sajit, you carry your work home. You become a less efficient employee for me." He says, "Home is for you to go back, spend time with your family, come back tomorrow morning fully rejuvenated so that you do a damn good job. Why do you think we have 8 hours of work? Remember this." And I'm recollecting this. This happened in the year 1995, you know. So the fact that here was a boss who actually told me not to work after I leave the workplace also gave me a great insight to say that I must finish my work before I leave, if it's so important. Else, I must be able to leave it there, come back and complete it. So that was one of the first things that I kind of learned. And I've made it a point thereafter to make sure that, while you do your work, you must, but you must also remember to take your coffee breaks in office, but they make all the difference. And you probably come back much better equipped to handle what's on hand for you. So that was one thing that I kind of carried with me. In certain other cases, I've had a couple of personal, misfortunes of having met with a couple of accidents and things like that. So I was working for the SR group, and I remember the corporate office and the chairman's office actually offered to fly their private aircraft to have my family transferred, shifted to where I'd met with the accident. I'd met with an accident in another town, And let me remind you that in those days, and as is today, each landing and takeoff of an aircraft, a private aircraft, costs 40,000 rupees, which is not small monies in the year 1999. And I was a deputy manager in that company, the same one which I told you about the other vice president. But here was the chairman's office and the corporate HR team, Mr. Ruya's office, who actually offered to fly their private aircraft to have my family members picked so they could be moved to where I was in the hospital. Those have been real HR lessons, like that the book says, these are HR management lessons that Harvard Business School probably wouldn't teach you. What they don't teach you at Harvard Business School, probably. I mean, I'm using that as an analogy, but these are real life lessons that these big men, and no wonder they are the business leaders of the country today. So this is another one. So wherever the family or the employee had a challenge or a concern, it was important that business targets and business results and business feasibility or profitability be thrown out of the window when it came to dealing with human beings. And these human beings have taught me that. And that's something that we've tried to inculcate in every HR department that we set up thereafter in all the organizations. So these are a couple of top of the mind recalls that I could share with you.
And today, when people criticize HR professionals for being unreasonable, for all the different reasons that they give, you being in that space, what is it, or how would you justify what the profession is doing per se to what the expectation of the public is from this side of the table?
Okay, it's important that we understand in the last 20-25 years, the majority of the HR professionals that you see are there by default and not by design. In many cases, when the business numbers became too tough to meet, in quite a few organizations, HR has become a parking slot. So there has been a dilution in the very approach to this trade. And let me tell you, sadly, we've forgotten the fact that it's the most critical resource that a business has. But the abundance of this resource in this country has probably therefore allowed us to kind of take it a little lightly than it should be taken. And that I'd like to think is one of the reasons. So there's no individual or there's no reason specifically. It's a business realignment which has caused this. And so if you still see, many of the business development leaders over a period of time either move into an L&D or move into HR. Now, there was also a specific positive reason for that. If a business person moved into HR, the business thought that they would probably be more business savvy in their decisions. And in the process, sadly, in certain cases, what happened was the human got diluted and the resources got inflated. And that kind of lost the balance. I've always felt, the human resources department of a company is the mother of the house. Okay, so the hand that rocks the cradle will rule the company and rule the world, therefore. So if it's not done in the right manner, the end result of the business numbers or the way that the business culture is perceived would probably go wrong. So due weightage and due credibility needs to be given to the decisions of the mother in the house. So same way in HR, if HR doesn't have a say or a seat on the table, it's a matter of time before it could prove to be detrimental to any business. And as HR practitioners, now to answer the last part of your question, we therefore need to have that put in a lot of effort to win the credibility with the business. That, so what he or she is contributing is going to actually benefit our bottom line. The day you're able to prove that, let me assure you, no business head would not want HR besides him. So
that's true. Very, very true. And very beautifully said also, Sajit. Now, moving back to you as an HR professional who is now being called to speak and share your journey, your learnings, how do you look at that shift now, like you said, from a central government job to a private organization? Now, that
is a huge mindset shift itself.
Absolutely.
From security to being on your toes all the time. But then
Absolutely.
over a period of time, you realize that no, if you perform, you are there, unless
Correct.
and until the company is going through a huge challenge. So
Correct.
this journey of yours from that secure space that you were in, and literally with a gun in hand, to
Yes.
now into a space where you have a metaphorical gun when you want to shoot out people out of the organization. How has this journey been for you in hindsight when you look at all that you have achieved, you have done, and
Yeah.
any moments of stories that still remain very close to your heart?
Okay. Yeah. So one thing that I've learned initially, like I said, is, unless it is absolutely necessary, people should be the last to be released in case of a failure of business. Because please remember, the business has failed, never the people. And in the hierarchy of an organization, the top person has a responsibility of ensuring that the next in line is made to understand what he or she is expected, like our parents have groomed us as elders, or the higher salary takers. I'll use this word. There is a higher responsibility for the seniors to be able to guide and get the best out of the team members. Now, to correlate this, we are the only airport in the country who didn't cut a salary for a single day, didn't send a single person home during the entire duration of the pandemic or the COVID, when the airports came to a halt, complete halt. We did a little bit of realignment of ensuring that resources were available, and we ensured all employees were paid every month without fail, and nobody was asked to go home. Now, for me, that is the robustness or the credibility of the business, and that was a proof of the pudding. And I'd like to think that that has probably helped us to have an extremely high engagement score among employees. Point number one. Point number two, a lot of employees were left and gone wanting to come back and rejoin us. And last but not the least, the fact that my passenger still regularly compliments the services being provided at the business. These three things are regular reminders that if you treat your people right, they will invariably and always go the extra mile for you. And I'd like to think the relation between the management and the employee has to be almost bordering on a quasi friendship. And who's a friend? A friend is somebody who you can bank on, who you trust, will not leave your side when the need arises. Others are just acquaintances. And if the HR department needs to be of any value addition to an organization, they need to be considered as quasi friends, like I use it, because a professional relation. So quasi friends, but somebody I can count on when my chips are down. For me personally, that has been one stickler of my values. No matter what, if the employee comes, make sure that he or she has a reason to be heard, to be assumed to be needing some support from our end. And we have enough and more resources, be it money, be it time, be it everything else. And it's for us, therefore, to give that little, like that girl's husband being transferred. It was just a phone call and I pulling his leg and he telling me he hasn't met me for a long time. But we were actually be able to impact an entire family and life. So I'd like to think that that is something that, as HR, we should be able to utilize. And because see, then what happened was, let me give you the example. The CEO acknowledged that and suddenly looked at HR in a new light altogether, because he was no longer losing a good employee. And we were contributing to the bottom line of the business somewhere. I don't know if I've drifted away from the question, but I thought this is what was top of the mind for me.
Yeah, curious now to come back to your career on your stint at BIL and the impact that you created there, because what you did there was magic. I have visited T2 recently and I saw the amazing work that has gone into it. When did you join and what was the magic all about? I'd love to know that.
It's a lovely place to be. Let me tell you, it's a great place to be. After probably a hospital, the most human place you could think about is a place of travel, because there is the invariably the omnipresent moment of separation happening there, and human beings are probably at their most vulnerable, because it's a form of separation. You could be going in for a day, you could be going for a year, you could be migrating permanently, but there is a life being decided or changed or impacted at that moment in time. And therefore, I always spoke about it. He says, after the hospitals, life-changing moments happens at railway stations, airports, and bus stops. So me and my team, we always try to make sure, and when I say team, I mean the entire family of BIL. We always bore this in mind that the person coming to us is already in a state of anxiety, uncertainty, and a certain element of unpredictability. Our job is to soften that and lighten that, and whatever it needs to be done at that moment in time, let's do it. We'll decipher the how and the why later. But if the passengers' experience is made a little nicer, our salary is justified. And that's, I think, something that luckily for me, the team is imbibed. And they also therefore found a reason or a value addition happening there. They also found meaning in what they did. Be the elderly parents standing and waving to the only girl going abroad to do her masters in some foreign land. The uncertainty, the fear, the leaving the nest, all of that, was there for us to kind of address and soften. And every single day, which meant every single day we had a reason to be there and feeling good about it. And that for me is what the magic is all about. Imagine being able to do it to so many people. And we now have 100,000 people traveling that airport every single day. And I'm sure quite a few of them are going through some level of uncertainty, unpredictability, or some element of adversity. Having to leave a sick child at home, the mother's traveling alone, she has a business meeting to attend another town. So those are, and there are many instances, let me tell you, there are many, many instances that have happened. And airport is a very happening place. But what is very, very rewarding and satisfying is the fact that we have been able to therefore soften the harshness of this entire or a passenger life experience in some way. And the best part is it's very easy for us. Let me tell you a little secret here. Any corner of the airport does it. Everybody in BL gets credit for it. Well, it's a BL experience. And I'd like to think that that is what the magic has all been about. And we were lucky enough to be challenged a couple of times on one occasion by the pandemic. And on the other occasion, a more happy instance of having to build a bigger global standard terminal. So those were the two high points that actually helped us. As management, we were also lucky that despite sale of the stakes that happened twice, employees were never permitted to feel insecure or this thing. So that again, I'd like to think is a reflection of their confidence in the management. And end of the day, we operate like a family, like I said. So there are people who have gone abroad, made some money, and come back and joined us back, saying that now I want to retire here. And all credit to all those employees who have kind of added to that and sustained that entire spirit. So that for me is probably what I would call the magic of BIL.
Wow. Okay, magic truly it is. Especially now after T1, when you walk into T2 and you look around, it is pure magic. When you set out to create T2, what was the idea? And did everything materialize the way it was planned, or did it go beyond plan? Because that was a very ambitious project. And to see it all come true with life inside the airport, by life I mean nature, so close, which normally we don't get to see that much of green in the airport. How did you manage? How did you design? How did it all come together? Because, of course, the team is very important here. How did that sense of ownership seep into everyone to get the best out of everyone and the team as a whole?
Yeah, so the first and foremost, obviously, like I said, there is a sense of ownership in every BIL employee of that airport. It's my airport, So it began from there. So when we were expanding and putting a new one, right from the first management who had originally envisaged this entire terminal, who then sold their stakes off and moved on, and the new management who came, and the present managing director who then took over, he carried forward that basic and then worked on it. We had a full-fledged project team which actually took charge of it. We had a couple of important partners who helped us make this. We had international designers who came and helped us make this. But the basic intent that we as an organization enjoyed, which was spearheaded by the managing director, is that we are based in Karnataka. We are based in Bangalore. While we are going to have an international airport here, we will ensure that in letter and spirit, every part of this airport has to represent the values, the art, and the spirit of the state and the city. And Bangalore is known as a garden city. So what did we do? We decided to turn it around a little, and we made an airport within a garden, not a garden within an airport. So we said, this is a garden. We will also have a terminal inside it. And it's basis that the teams actually took it upon themselves to move forward. We were delayed. We were delayed substantially thanks to the fact that everything came to a halt because of the pandemic, the first wave and the second wave. But thanks to again to the managing director and the top management and all of us, that we didn't lose focus of the fact that here was something that we wanted to envision. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something, and this is a credit to my engineering and maintenance team. We were the first platinum level certified lead airport, which was even given the certification before it was completed. So that is the level of commitment that the team showed in its construction, because every detail that is required to be a lead, platinum level lead certified, lead incidentally makes you environment friendly and all of that, was made available. And I think I'd like to think that we are one of the first international airports which actually got certified before the completion and the operation began. Normally they insist on, going through making sure that the operations are kind of sustaining the entire process before, but we were given this. So that shows the level of commitment and belonging and ownership that each member of the team actually, including the partners, the concessionaires, and the contractors, all of them. That ownership, I'd like to think, is something that, is very, very contagious. Once you have it, it's difficult to kind of wean it off. And it also attracts others before, during, and after the pandemic also.
And now that you brought the pandemic in, Sajit, the
Yes.
pandemic was, I think, an unexpected teacher who came into the lives of all of us and
Really?
kind of reshifted everyone back to the starting line, immaterial of where you were. It made you think, it made you do a lot of reflection. What were some of your reflections from the pandemic?
First and foremost, personally, if you ask me, I like to always think that there's a rap on all our knuckles, because we thought that we'd become smarter than the universe and nature. And it is slightly harsh reminder to put us back in where we belong. And I think it's done it correctly, because we were kind of going a little berserk to think that we knew it all.
Yeah.
That was the first point. Second point was, it also, I'd like to think, reinstated in us basic values of being human, helping the other, realizing that we are not islands and we need other people, others. We are social animals and we need each other to survive and sustain in adversities. So that's the second one. And also made us a little more empathetic, like I said at the beginning, realizing that this harm could also come to us. We were so close to actually being infected by it because your neighbor had it or your next building had it. And there was no reason why you wouldn't get it. And initially, if you remember, we had no cure for it. It was almost near fatal. And we only hoped that we would survive it if it kind of infected us. So these 2 or 3 things are some things that kind of were the first lessons that we learned, followed by the fact that I also like to believe that, it was a test to see how much did we walk the talk that we gave, be it in the form of being employers, being in the form of dealing with other human beings, being sensitive to the environment and to the nature and ecology. I think it was a big reset button for all of us, and how well we accepted that reset. So, and that is where the new coinage has come, no? Learn, unlearn, and relearn. We were all forced to relearn the whole thing, unlearn a few things, and therefore relearn a few more things. Yeah. And that for me has been the greatest takeaway from this entire pandemic.
And from life, because from whatever you had said, there are so many life lessons you've shared. But looking back at such a decorated life, such an interesting life, and so much of human elements still intact in the life, what are 3 life lessons that you'd like to leave us with?
First and foremost, while we are here, let's do what's best for everyone, including us. Because the moment you do everything for everyone, we get automatically included. Yeah. This is like that famous Kabir Doha or something, which I'd like to translate and say, they say the person who grinds sandalwood for other people to apply as a paste doesn't need to apply it for himself because his hand is already scented. Yeah. So I'd like to think that being nice and good to the others has the same impact. If you are fair and good to the others, I'd like to think that it comes back to us without having to go around seeking it. You get your fair share for sure, and that's something that life assures you. That's one. Second is we should be grateful for what we have today. Beyond a point, greed arises from not being grateful. Yeah, I'd like to think that the wrong side of gratefulness is greed in some form or the other. Be it what we have, who we have, and what life has bestowed on us till date. So gratitude is something I'd like to think that We must always be, no matter what our level, and comparison, therefore, is the enemy of that gratitude. And finally, leave behind something which probably helps another person, knowingly or unknowingly, preferably an unknown and an unnamed person. Do something which lightens or brightens the life of another person. Whenever an opportunity arises, look for it. And whenever it arises, irrespective of who the other person is, try and do it, because I'm sure and I'm confident that it will come back to us many folds over sometime when we need it. It's an investment more than anything else. So these are some of the life lessons I've kind of imbibed.
And so truly human, because today we are human doings, while these are reminders to be human beings, and being human has its own advantages. That's so beautifully rounded. Thank you so very much, Sajit. It's people like you who continue to give hope for the HR fraternity itself, because when you speak in language that is so relatable, in treating the other human with the respect that you expect, so mutually give and take, it makes a lot of meaning to the whole relationship and brings in a lot of depth to the conversations that you have. Thank you so much for being you. An honor to have had you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Wishing you the very best always.
Thank you, Rashmi, for having my privilege, and thank you so much.
With that, we complete this episode of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know inspirational people whose story needs to be heard. You can write in at rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thirdeye@gmail.com.